King-size raid in Barking, 25 million cigarettes are stolen. New warning about the minced meat cheats. Honest Ed, the new man at the Old Vic. And why Wembley might lose the FA Cup. Hello, good evening. Police are tonight searching for a gang who stole £1 million worth of cigarettes in a raid in East London. Last night, 3 men broke into the Containerways depot at Ripple Road in Barking. They brought their own tractors to tow away 3 containers and 25 million cigarettes.
The Containerways depot just off the A13 is an international road freight terminal, handling all sorts of cargo. But last night, the thieves were after 3 particular containers, which held 25 million Carreras cigarettes, Dunhill and Rothmans brands. They'd arrived from Darlington and were awaiting distribution. The cigarettes are worth over £1 million. The 3 men brought 3 tractor units to tow the containers away. 2 of them had been stolen the week before in Ilford. Security guard Raymond Finch was on watch at the depot.
Well, one pushed me and the other one whacked me across the side of the face. I fell on the floor and they handcuffed me and I said, don't move, you won't get hurt. And they shoved me in a corner, tied me out. That's about it, you know.
Did they threaten you at all?
Yes, they stuck this, I should say it was a gun in the back of my neck. And they said, the other one with the gun said, if you move, you're dead.
If you're having difficulty imagining just what sort of quantity £1 million worth of cigarettes represents, then we've done a little research. And it turns out that that amount of cigarettes laid end to end would stretch for 1,330 miles, or from London to Leningrad. They'd keep a 20-a-day man going for 3,500 years, or 3,500 smokers going for a year.
Barking police are investigating the daring theft.
We had to feel free from the containers and that sort of thing, and people getting into the premises, you know, but this is something which is more of a nuisance value, nothing organised like this.
Do you think they're going to have trouble getting rid of that quantity of cigarettes?
Once the cigarettes have been broken down into smaller quantities, no, but of course the thing that's primarily important at the moment is storage facilities. They must have somewhere where this amount of cigarettes can be stored.
These are the registration numbers of the 3 containers, 1 orange in colour and 2 painted red. Barking police would appreciate any information from the public. Jane Corbin for Thames News.
A report out today might make you pause if you're tucking into a meal made of minced meat. The Consumers Association says shoppers should beware. Mince often contains a little meat and a lot of other things. And today in London there were calls for tougher controls on the meat trade.
It may look like mince, but it isn't always prime beef that goes in it. All too often there's pork or lamb or just plain fat. And occasionally, when they get it back to the laboratories, other, far less savoury bits and pieces thrown in too. Tests like these have convinced the Consumers Association and environmental health officers that much tougher controls are now needed to tell customers precisely what they're getting in their mince.
Well, yes, we've had all sorts of things. We've got 38 cases outstanding in London at the moment, and these range from excessive fat levels, which are mentioned in the Which report recently, the mince labelled as beef, which in fact contain cheaper cuts of pork and lamb, and things like parts of animals' mouths, mucous glands, intestinal tissue, tissue of the uterus, and stomach tissue from poultry.
Will they do you any harm?
No, I wouldn't have thought so. However, is this what the consumer expects when she hands over her money at the counter?
And to deter such unwholesome additives and such unscrupulous butchers, there are the mince police, the environmental health officers doing their daily rounds.
Good morning, can I have a pound of mince, please?
Spot checks in London alone have led to 38 prosecutions this year. Sometimes the mince is more than a quarter fat, sometimes it isn't all beef, sometimes it's a great deal worse.
Now I'll be dividing the sample into 3 separate portions here, one of which you'll keep, one of which I send to the public analyst, and one we keep for reference, which can be submitted to the government chemist in case of any dispute.
Last year, hungry Britons demolished 150,000 tons of the stuff. But if they'd seen what the lab men sometimes see, they might have lost their appetites altogether. Ed Boyle, Thames News.
Today's cut in the mortgage rate by 1.5% will benefit London homeowners more than anyone else in the country. At 12%, householders will save more than £1.10 a month on each £1,000 borrowed. This is what it'll mean in practice. The more you pay, the more you save. The average London mortgage is £22,500. Mr. Thornton, what's this going to mean to the housing market? Will prices go up now?
Well, can I say, first of all, in the past 3 years, the monthly instalment on a £25,000 mortgage has gone up by £90. And this reduction of 1.5 takes £30 off the monthly instalment or so, 28 to be exact. Now, that isn't going to be enough to make people start paying crazy prices for houses, but it will mean that the market will move and be in a healthy state, and that will encourage builders to make more housing starts, and that's what we're really after.
It's going to mean that a lot of people who haven't been able to afford mortgages up to now suddenly find they can. Will it be easy for them to get them?
There's a lot of money around at the moment, and I think the receipts are healthy, so that it is a good time for anyone to buy. I don't think the prices will take off. I think that a lot of people have been raising money to buy the house they already live in, that is the council tenants. So it should be a good time for first-time buyers, and it will also make it much easier for those who have had a mortgage for a few years to pay the monthly instalments, which has been a big problem.
But as you say, there's been a lot of money around. People have got used to that. Is it going to carry on being around?
I think so. We'll have to work very hard to get it, because I think the bank's lending will probably be cut back. But the rates that we're paying to investors and the range of products we've got are still very attractive. And at the ordinary share rate and the rates we pay on short call money are still very attractive in the market, even with this cut.
But do you see this almost this mortgage on demand situation going on?
It's not really on demand. There's a 2 or 3 weeks waiting now, but I think that's going to go on for some months, yes.
How are you going to make sure that we don't have another house price spiral like we did in the early 70s?
Because I think you'd need much more of a cut to do that. As I said earlier, this has knocked about a third of the increase that has taken place over the last 2 or 3 years. You'd need a much more significant cut to do that, and I don't think this will do it.
Mr. Thornton, thank you.
Thank you very much.
A young woman and her baby died in a fire in Kentish Town today, but a young girl was led to safety along a high ledge by a teenager who braved the flames. Jane Corbin reports.
The fire started just before 1 o'clock this morning. 4 adults and a 4-month-old baby were trapped on the top floors of the council-owned flat in Caversham Road, Kentish Town. The family below were woken by cries for help.
Just the most awful screams, terrible, terrible screams. We were in bed, and we got up, looked out of the window, and everyone was just going mad. But then the whole street was alive with fire engines, police. And all the neighbours, everybody was running around trying to help.
How did you get out?
We tried to get out to the street door, but there was falling masonry, and there was a lady lying in the front garden. So we took our children out of the kitchen and out into the back garden.
18-year-old Carol Reed and her baby Ralston were brought out by firemen wearing breathing apparatus, but both died shortly afterwards. The dead woman's mother, Eunice Imami, jumped from the 3rd floor window. She's seriously ill in the Whittington Hospital. Her husband is also there, suffering from shock. But Mrs. Imami's 16-year-old daughter Sharon was led to safety along a 1st floor ledge by 17-year-old Trevor Pathan, who was passing by outside.
I ran upstairs, smashed a window, and got some lady out, 1st floor. Took her halfway down, told mate to take her. And I don't know what happened to the other one, mate. I tried to get in there. I got halfway in there, but it was too hot. Couldn't do it.
How did you manage to get through? Did you put something over your head?
I put a towel over my head, a wet towel.
The fire chief reckons that you should get a bravery award for what you did last night.
I don't really deserve myself. Someone died, didn't they? So
You did manage to save someone.
Oh yeah, but still. Pretty bad though.
Unions and management joined forces today in a bid to keep the cowboys out of their industry. They say plans to license firms who work with asbestos will be a license to kill, and one union took its protest onto the streets of London.
Both sides of the lagging industry say that the current proposals aren't strict enough. They say that the plans will still let the cowboys of the business undercut established companies, endangering workers and public alike. Stripping out asbestos can be an easy way to make quick money, especially with an inexperienced workforce recruited from the dole queue. This joint employer and union approach wants consultation with health and safety officials before licenses are awarded, and inspectors appointed from within the industry.
The current proposals by the Health and Safety Executive are, as we see it, a licence to kill. If you can spell asbestosis and pay £60, you get a licence. The economic pressures on people to do a job cheaply are enormous just now, and they'll be putting children at risk in school playgrounds, workers at risk in factories, people at risk in hospitals, and we've got to stop that.
Diseases caused by asbestos claim the lives of half the laggers' workforce. After 32 years in the industry, Eric Moore now lives with asbestosis.
I think the only thing that will help is there are much tighter laws on the equipment that's being used by these lads. Masks, proper protective clothing, and make sure that it is used. Make it law.
What are your feelings about the industry as a whole and what it's done to you?
I'm pretty bitter about it, actually. At 53, I'm finished.
The 3 hours of talks with the laggers' union and employers were described by the Health and Safety Executive as useful. A final decision about tightening up the industry will be announced in September. Michael Wilson, Thames News.
Police today widened their search for the people who'd stabbed a cyclist to death only yards from a police station. 27-year-old Keith Church was on his way home from his girlfriend's house at Hoddesdon in Hertfordshire on July the 9th when he died. Now police are trying to trace two men in a red Capri seen nearby at about the time of the killing.
Just after midnight on July the 8th, Keith Church was stabbed a matter of yards from Hoddesdon police station. One witness saw him being chased by a man aged between 30 and 35, about 5'10", with short hair and an olive, possibly Mediterranean complexion, with a few days' growth of beard. The victim, bleeding heavily, managed to cycle half a mile down the road till he collapsed, and a local resident called the police.
We were able to talk to him very briefly before he died, and he was able to tell us that he'd been stopped by the occupants of a red car who demanded money from him. When he'd refused, they then stabbed him.
Now detectives are searching for two red cars seen in the area. The occupants of one, a red old-style Capri with a black vinyl roof, had been spotted 4 times in the hour before the killing, first at Enfield, then Wormley, Broxbourne and Hoddesdon. At each location, the occupants had been shouting abuse at pedestrians and a teenage cyclist. They've since been seen in Ponders End. Police have now issued this artist's impression of the driver. He's described as grotesquely fat, about 25, with fine mousy-coloured hair worn long and lank, dressed in a dirty white T-shirt with capped sleeves. He and the other occupant both had very strong Scottish accents. The other red car is an Allegro, seen parked outside the police station about the time of the stabbing. Detectives in the incident room at Hoddesdon are anxious to hear from anyone who saw either car or can provide any further information. Tricia Ingram's Thames News.
The British consulate in the northern French town of Lille said today they've gone out of their way to ensure that 3 imprisoned South Londoners are as comfortable as possible. The 3, James Humphreys, William Cockram and Peter Caviello, are being held on currency charges. They were arrested 6 weeks ago with £100,000 in a suitcase on their way to buy cars for import. The Men's Euro MP, Richard Balfe, today sent a telegram to the French Justice Minister complaining about their treatment. Bob Mellish has been called a turncoat by Peter Tatchell, the man likely to succeed Mr Mellish as Labour candidate in Bermondsey. Mr Tatchell said Mr Mellish's resignation from Labour was a slap in the face for people who'd campaigned for him in the past. In an article in today's Labour Herald, he blames Mr Mellish's support for anti-Labour candidates at the local elections for causing the final rift in the Bermondsey party.
This year's wheat harvest should get underway in the home counties this weekend. Half the crop will be an experimental wonder wheat, but so far it hasn't lived up to expectations.
The winter barley harvest is now finished. It's been a good crop with yields well up on last year. But Hertfordshire farmer Tim Vigus isn't so happy about his wheat. The Department of Agriculture recommended that he try a new wonder wheat called Avalon. It doesn't grow very tall, but it's meant to give extremely high yields of the sort of wheat that's excellent for making bread. So Tim converted more than 80% of his 120 acres of wheat to Avalon. Unfortunately, this new strain has fallen prey to a whole range of moulds and funguses.
It's a disappointment, this, Mike. In June, this looked a bumper crop, but due to the very dry May and the exceptional wet weather in June, these fungal diseases have got in these ears. It's reduced the grain weight considerably. The grains are still there, but they're very shriveled. What's happened is it's just the fungus takes the goodness out of the grain.
Tim had hoped to harvest as much as 3 tons of wheat per acre. He now expects to get little more than 2. Still, it isn't a bad yield, and farm consultant David Nichols predicts it won't affect the price of bread and flour in the shops.
I don't think it'll make any difference at all to the cost of the loaf for the consumer.
So the farmers may lose some money on this and not get the yields they want, but the consumers shouldn't be hit by it.
Farmers won't make quite as much money as they wanted. They never do. But things will be quite reasonable.
But will Tim Vigus use Avalon again?
I won't say it'll be the last, because I think even as bad as it looks, it's such a wonderful high potential wheat, it'll still give us a reasonable yield, but it'll be nothing like we expected, nothing at all.
The harvest normally gets underway in late August, but the Avalon has died and will ripen no further. Now, providing there are no repeats of yesterday's rain and storms, Tim expects to have his combines out in the fields this weekend. Michael Voss in Hertfordshire for Thames News.
A plan to build a brand new mental hospital near Epping has been condemned by an organisation that campaigns for the mentally handicapped. Mencap say the 60-bed hospital at North Weald would be old-fashioned and harmful.
The man you see has a 16-year-old daughter, Kitty, who's severely mentally handicapped. But she's very happy and very active. Kevin McGrath says it's because she's always been looked after at home. If she'd been put into a mental hospital, he reckons 17-year-old Kitty would be bedridden by now. That's why the Royal Society for the Mentally Handicapped are angry about Essex Health Authority's plan to build a 60-bed psychiatric hospital on this sports field, part of St Margaret's Hospital at Epping. But the decision is justified by the health authority.
Well, I know there is a theory that mentally handicapped people can live in ordinary domestic housing, and I think to some extent that's true, but I think that the very handicapped, who may also have physical handicaps, serious physical handicaps, it's very difficult to manage them in that sort of accommodation, and one can't provide a full range of assessment facilities in that surroundings. We're talking of a very small, in terms of hospitals, a very small unit, 60 places, no more.
Well, it's still too big. Anything over 30 beds or even over 12 becomes an institution. This has been the experience over the years. And in Sheffield, you know, where they did try and build smaller units, they still find a 30-bed unit too big because people do not get individual attention.
Mencap say almost all mentally handicapped people could live in sheltered housing. They say only a handful need to be looked after full-time in hospital. But West Essex Health Authority think 60 beds are necessary, and the new psychiatric hospital will open here in 1986. Simon Neve at North Weald for Thames News.
Canadian millionaire Ed Mirvish became the new owner of the Old Vic Theatre today. He paid $550,000 for it, even though he'd never seen the place before. He intends to spend a further £1 million in renovation work before opening it again to the public in September next year. Christopher Rainbow spoke to him late this afternoon.
You own a theatre in Toronto, but most of your money comes from restaurants and a department store there that you've got, which is called Honest Ed. Why does Honest Ed, the storekeeper, want the London Old Vic?
Many of the famous actors who have played the Old Vic Theatre have also played our theatre in Toronto, the Royal Alexandra Theatre, and I've read so much about the Old Vic and Lillian Bayliss and Emma Collins, and I have developed an affection for this theatre, and I thought when the opportunity presented itself, I would try and take advantage of it.
Now that you've got it, what are you going to do with it?
The first thing we will do, we'll try to refurbish it, restore it, make it as beautiful as possible, and then while we're doing that, we will prepare a season of shows to offer the public.
Around a dozen theatres in London are dark through lack of funds or lack of plays to put on. Where do you think you can succeed where they've failed?
I will try to do the same thing that we've done in Toronto. I would like to offer a subscription, a package of 7 shows at a very reasonable price in a very beautiful theatre. Hopefully there will be enough people to buy it and fill the theatre. If not, we'll have to try something else.
What role do you intend to play in the new Old Vic?
It presents a great challenge to me, the same as our theatre did in Toronto. And I think that I can pull it off. I'm just egotistical enough, perhaps. I may fail, I don't know, but I hope to succeed.
And good luck to him. 2 Thames Valley policemen were badly hurt and 9 others suffered minor injuries in a road crash in Bedfordshire today. Their van skidded into a ditch. The policemen from Bletchley had been watching a convoy of 40 cars carrying hippies. An Essex coroner has called for a ban on motorbikes. Guy German told a Southend inquest that the bikes are a danger to their riders and everyone else. The coroner recorded an accidental death verdict on a man who died in a crash on wet roads. Police have identified the badly burned body of a man found in an old pillbox at Acton. He was Arthur Roach and he worked at the Duke of York's Theatre. Police still say his death is suspicious. Rita.
A gang clubbed a man with an iron bar, then robbed him in Clerkenwell today. It happened outside Barclays Bank when the man was delivering money. He suffered injuries. It's not known yet how much was taken. The London Film Festival will go ahead in November, even though the JLC has cut its grant. The organisers say they'll find money elsewhere for the 18-day festival, but they still want their £23,000 grant restored.
Police in North London are looking for two men whose car dragged a policeman 65 feet along a road in Holloway. The constable stopped the car because it had been earlier reported stolen. When he tried to question the two men, the car, an escort, drove off down Parkside Road, dragging the policeman and his bike behind it. The policeman suffered only an ankle injury. And a baby fell 20 feet onto concrete at Gravesend today and escaped completely unhurt. Peter Killali, who's one, fell from his open bedroom window in Gordon Road. His mother said it was incredible that he wasn't killed.
Now time for sport, and there's a plan afoot to take the FA Cup final away from Wembley. Here's Simon Reed.
It may seem like sacrilege, but not even plans for a big facelift can deflect criticism from soccer's national stadium. It's in bad shape and it's in the wrong place, say its critics, but it does have tradition. For 60 years they've been running the Cup round Wembley. The stadium has been so closely linked with major events in the sport that its divine right to be the figurehead has never been questioned.
Now, though, Wembley's contract with the FA has expired, and while renegotiations are taking place, a new plan has been launched to use other venues for this country's major soccer matches. The leader of that campaign is the Fulham chairman, Ernie Clay. What is it that he finds wrong with the most famous soccer stadium in the world?
Well, everything's wrong with it, isn't it? It's a clapped out thing, and he must be a very, very bad advert after all the people who have come back from the World Cup and seen what they have seen in a poor country like Spain.
But where are the alternatives?
The alternatives are great. For instance, if you go to the north of England, they've got a place called Ossel Stadium where you can get 120,000 people there. A tip. There's Chelsea, 4.5 acres we could develop. I've even, they offered Chelsea to the FA and they refused it.
Clay maintains that the Football League would be better off by owning its own stadium. Even though attendances may be smaller, the receipts would be all theirs.
So what you'd lose on the roundabouts, you'd gain back on the screens, because you wouldn't be letting outsiders take 42% out of a game, and that's not counting hamburgers and all like that, right? That we can ill afford to lose. We in the Football League are keeping too many barnacles. Well, I believe now we've got people who have put in £2.5 million into the game, and you've got people like me who've got $1 million in it, and all these other people who've got a lot of money in it. They, who have sacrificed all they've worked for over the years, there'll be more than support for it, because they know that we're getting ripped off.
Never short of a line, Ernie Clay. In cricket, there'll be at least one London team in the NatWest final. In today's semi-final draw, Surrey were drawn at home against Middlesex, Yorkshire meet Warwickshire. And Surrey are happy with that home draw for more reasons than one. This week's collapse of Sports Space Marketing Limited, the firm that sold advertising space at the Oval, means a potential £50,000 loss in revenue. But the Middlesex fixture is a real money spinner. Surrey expect a gate of £15,000 for that match.
I think it's me. Thames weather now, if I can get that right. It looks as though the rain's going to stay with us for a time. Today's satellite picture shows thick cloud and low pressure just to the north. That's now heading our way. So tonight there'll be showers, some heavy, and there could be some more thunder. Tomorrow the cloud and rain's going to continue, but they should die out by evening. Temperatures will be around 23 degrees centigrade, that's 73 degrees Fahrenheit. Rita.
Thanks, Colin. Now the latest headlines from ITN. Building societies have cut their mortgage rate by 1.5% to 12%. The National Westminster Bank cut their home loan rate by the same amount, but the other big banks have made no change so far. The police are to get a 10% pay rise from September the 1st. The health service union COSI called it a kick in the teeth for health workers who've been offered about 6%. And thousands of people are reported to be fleeing West Beirut during a lull in the fighting. The Israelis have opened a crossing point to let people get out to East Beirut. And wherever the camera is, that's it for now. Robin Houston has the late headlines after news at 10, and Colin Baker and I will be back at 6 o'clock tomorrow evening. Till then, from all of us here, good night.